There's this perception among competitive TF2 players that rocket jumping is an important skill to learn for soldiers because it translates directly to what you do in sixes, but somehow that's not really the case for sticky jumping, and that Demomen don't benefit from learning how to jump past basic rollouts. It's true that demo jumping does not reach the levels of applicability of soldier, but I hope to present a case using concrete examples of how different levels of sticky jumping skill translate directly into a competitive setting, and give reasons why demo men should jump beyond it just being fun or any indirect application, like having better general movement. Now, before we start, let's talk about where to practice. And the best place to practice jumping is, would you believe, jump maps. Of course, you can play maps offline, whether that be in TF2 or even Momentum mod if you have it, or on an online server. I'll leave a link below to the Tempus Network, which are the servers that I use. But what maps should I play? I'll be giving some rudimentary recommendations in this video, but I'll also leave a link to a couple of jump.tf spreadsheets that either list the given tier, which is a difficulty rating, or the intended class and map download for pretty much every jump map. Of course, you'll get more out of your time and improve faster if you play maps intended for demo man. Keep in mind this is not intended to be a guide on how to sticky jump, but rather to show you how different degrees of sticky jumping skill can benefit you directly in sixes. Now with all that out of the way, let's get started. Starting off with the basics. These are skills that you'll develop very early on in the tiers, around tier 2. These skills are very commonplace in a competitive setting whenever you're jumping, and many of you may already have a decent grasp on some of these. First, we have the crouch det, which I'll talk about in comparison to the standard crouch jump det jumps, because the two fit similar niches. Crouch dets tend to be a more horizontal, less vertical jump, and serve as a very consistent kind of sticky jump. As you get more familiar with them, you'll adjust to how your placement over the sticky changes your height or distance you get on the jump, which makes it more versatile. You can use crouch dets pretty much anywhere. You can use a normal crouch jump kind of jump, but crouch dets are a very common kind of jump on rollouts or any kind of bomb, especially with Uber. That being said, you won't want to replace your basic jump with crouch dets entirely for a couple of reasons. First of all, there will be times that you want a lot of height with your jump that crouch dets can't really offer. Also, more importantly, crouch dets have a higher health cost than standard sticky jumps, so they're best avoided on health-sensitive rollouts. Ultimately, crouch dets are a great skill for when space is limited with low ceilings or doorways, or in any circumstances where health is not a concern, which includes rollouts like Snakewater to mid, Sunshine to mid through Valley. And also their reliability makes them great for chaining into other stickies, which we'll talk about later. Before that though, we're going to talk about a basic pogo. This is around where the average competitive demo is in terms of regular use. A one sticky pogo is very useful in sixes for Uber bombs through doorways because you can start further back and run less risk of a sticky getting knocked away by spam in the doorway itself. Some common examples include Metalworks House into second or Process IT into mid. But as you master this skill, you can use it really anywhere you'd like, even Process 1 into last. Sometimes you'll see pogos used to take space or catch players in wide open areas of the map instead of getting through a doorway, and for those applications I think single pre's are generally better, which we'll get to soon. As for good maps to practice these skills on, really any tier 2 demo map will have jumps to crouch det and pogo on. Lithium and Speed 2 are some good examples. Moving on now to more intermediate skills, which you'll find in tier 3 maps. These jumps are often more niche, but helpful nonetheless when they come up. The primary skill here is the single pre, which builds off of and usually utilizes the crouch det. Like the crouch det, single pre's also have a tier 1 analog, that being just a 2 sticky jump. As a quick tangent, I think this is partly where this demo jumping doesn't translate in-game notion stems from. Stickies are really powerful, and just dropping a couple down works in the sense that you get where you wanted to go. But that being said, in pretty much every circumstance you see a double sticky, such as sacks, Uber bombs in wide open spaces, or bombs to catch players, the single pre is a more reliable option for a couple reasons. First of all, while 2 stickies will make you go faster velocity-wise, single pre start faster because during that time your first sticky's arming, you're already shooting your second. And by the time that is arming, you're already in the air. Second, and more importantly, is just versatility and control. A double sticky jump is much harder to control, and you'll often end up in corners or smashing into walls, whereas a single pre gives you much more control. If you want to start low and then get height, you can do that, which lets you bomb through lower IT on process and land on bats. If you want to start off high and then get more horizontal speed, then you can do that and cover a lot of distance on a sack, which can be useful on Bagel to bomb from behind a house where it's harder to get spammed and still have good vision. You can stay low on your bomb or go high, or really just tailor that kind of bomb to the specific needs at the specific moment. For these reasons, single pre's are a great go-to in Koth for both sacks and catching medics during those uber ad margins, as well as any open area you want to bomb in. And they can even be used in circumstances similar to the basic pogo we covered, assuming you have enough horizontal room for a crouch dead. I will throw in an honorable mention to double pre's, which can be used on those skybox nuke bombs you really only see on process second and mid, but truthfully you don't really get much more out of them than you would with just 3 or 4 stickies on the ground. The next skill is wall pogo, which I'll admit probably crosses the line into indirect use in-game, but I am including it because it's going to come up a lot in a lot of these maps, and it still offers a skill unique to sticky jumping that helps Demomen in 6s, rather than just a general mechanics improvement. While soldiers might have the original, no such reskin exists for the sticky bomb launcher, and all stickies are going to fire out of your right side, I suppose, unless you have flip view models. We've all been in situations where hiding a trap from some kind of weird angle and then one sticky gets out of place and ruins the whole thing. And usually when setting up a trap, the crosshair serves more as a point of reference instead of where the sticky actually lands. So practicing wall pogo will do a lot to help you internalize exactly where your stickies come out and how they behave when surfaces are closer to you, especially at strange angles, things like that. One direct case of this is the Sunshine mid rollout to choke, or any rollout that you shoot stickies at the side of the spawn door, which can include process actually if you'd like to avoid extra crouch dead damage. As I said, you'll start to pick up these skills on tier 3 demo maps. Koa is one that has some good single pre-jumps, and if you really want to demolish wall pogo, you can try your hand at Ando. Finally, we're moving on to more advanced skills, and what I mention here will be quite restricted to certain rollouts in specific circumstances. Unsurprisingly, as we went from basic to complex, their use cases become less frequent. The primary skill here is air stickies, which I'll just define for my purposes here to be any sticky that you det midair, which is fired after you're already midair. I distinguish this from air pogo because you're usually only detonating one air sticky and don't have the health or even want to chain them together for an air pogo. And I distinguish this from a pre just to make things clearer to follow. Of course, the example you all know of is the Cadus rollout on process. And I found that you can use air stickies for faster rollouts on a few maps, usually from forward spawns, which I'm demonstrating now. Some good maps to practice air stickies include Koi, especially level 12 and 20, or Jump Reina, as well as most tier 4 and 5 demo maps. Now, if you're thinking to yourself, well, I already jump at a T3 level, and I don't really see jumping being useful past what you described there, then let me quickly say that just because a certain technique gets introduced in a tier, or is the primary skill of that tier, does not mean that you don't get anything out of jumping in higher tiers. Even something as rudimentary as a tier 1 crouch det will be more consistent and precise when done by a tier 6 jumper rather than even a tier 4 jumper. And that's exactly what you get in the tiers that progress beyond the techniques you can use in 6s, consistency and precision. Some of the rollouts and bombs demonstrated in this video might not be consistent enough to go for in-game if you merely reach the level they're introduced in and stop there. Essentially, what you're getting when you progress past tier 4 is not techniques that you can use in competitive per se, but rather more consistency and precision with the skills touched on here, and also an ability to freestyle in a sense, and succeed in difficult jumps without needing to practice them before, just doing whatever the moment calls for. To build off this, you get the ability to use these skills in new ways that haven't been experimented with before, as was the case with many of the jumps demonstrated in this video. And that about covers what I have to say. I wouldn't expect every demo to jump T4 and beyond, but hopefully I've made the case that doing so does translate directly into techniques used in a competitive environment. but more so I just wanted to provide an easy way to understand how skill progression and sticky jumping can translate to useful jumps in-game, so players have a better idea of what levels can provide what benefits in sixes. I think it would be really cool to see the way sticky jumping could get pushed forward, and the mindset of it's just good enough ignores a lot of untapped potential, I think. Either way though, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed.